My name is Charlotte Horn, and I was 18 years old when my sister's lie turned me into a criminal in my own home. When I look back now, it still feels unreal, like watching my own life collapse in slow motion while I stood there helpless. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon on the military base in Japan. The kind of day where everything feels ordinary until it isn't. My father, a strict U.S. Air Force officer, believed in discipline more than affection. His third wife, Maria, did her best to keep the house calm, balancing the moods of her three young daughters with her polite, slightly strained smiles. And then there was Lily, my 15-year-old biological sister, a walking contradiction of laughter, tears, and chaos. Lily and I had never been close. She was impulsive, emotional, and allergic to responsibility. I preferred calm order and staying out of trouble. Together we were fire and ice, destined to clash. Our fights were so frequent that they became background noise in our house arguments over chargers, clothes, even who got the last piece of cake. Still, for all her drama, I never believed she was capable of true malice. That belief died the day my father called me into his office. I remember the low hum of the ceiling fan, the faint smell of coffee on his desk, and the way Maria sat stiffly beside him, wringing her hands. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My father gestured for me to sit. "Charlotte, we need to talk," he said, his tone formal, too formal. "It's about your sister." My heart skipped. "Lily. She's made an accusation." Maria's voice was small. She's saying you hurt her." I frowned the words, not computing. Hurt her? What are you talking about? My father exhaled sharply as if ripping off a bandage. "She's accusing you of sexual assault." The room fell away. I stared at them, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was a misunderstanding. But no one did. "That's not true," I whispered. "That's insane. You know I'd never—" "We believe you," Maria said quickly, but her eyes darted to the floor. My chest tightened. "If you believe me, then why?" My father cut me off. "It's been reported to the authorities. It's protocol." "Protocol," I repeated. Disbelief turning to panic. "You went to the cops without even talking to me." He leaned forward, his expression heavy but unmoved. "It's the right thing to do. We have to let the system handle it." The system. That word sounded like a death sentence. Maria reached across the table, trying to take my hand. "Sweetheart, please understand, it's not personal. It's just procedure." I pulled away. "You think I assaulted my own sister, and you're calling that procedure." Neither of them answered. The silence was louder than any accusation. Over the next few weeks, I was questioned by a social worker. They asked things that made my skin crawl. "Have you ever touched her inappropriately? Did you ever say something she could have misunderstood?" I answered honestly, but it didn't matter. The woman's polite smile and fixed eyes told me she'd already decided who I was. At school, whispers spread like wildfire. Being on a military base meant everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than facts. My friends avoided me. Teachers' voices grew distant and careful. Even parents who used to greet me warmly at events now pulled their children away when I walked past. Everywhere I went, I felt the word monster hanging in the air. At home, things were worse. My father's tone became clipped, controlled. Maria stopped letting me be alone with my younger stepsisters. She hovered constantly, pretending it was for everyone's comfort. "It's not about you," she said one night when I finally snapped. "It's about appearances." Appearances. That word clung to my brain like a bad smell. I realized then it wasn't about truth or love. It was about saving face. My father couldn't risk scandal. Maria couldn't risk judgment. Their image mattered more than my innocence. Late one night, I stood in the hallway listening through my door as my father's voice rumbled in the kitchen. "She says she believes her," he muttered. "We can't ignore that," Maria replied softly. "She's just a child. Maybe something happened that she misinterpreted." I felt something inside me crack. They didn't believe me, not really. When I confronted my father days later, he avoided my eyes. "I believe you," he said finally. "But we have to handle this the right way for the family." "For the family," I repeated, stunned. "What about me?" He didn't answer. That night, I sat in my room staring at my reflection. My face looked hollow, older. "She's lying," I whispered. "Why would she lie?" The question echoed in the silence like a curse I couldn't undo. And deep down, a small, trembling part of me already knew whatever came next would destroy everything I'd ever known about love, loyalty, and family. If being accused had felt like a lightning strike, the aftermath was the slow burn that followed a fire that refused to die. Days turned into weeks, and my life became a study in humiliation. At school, people stopped talking when I entered a room. Teachers looked through me as if I were invisible. My best friend Hannah avoided my texts, her silence more painful than any insult. Rumors grew legs. Someone said I'd been arrested. Another said I'd confessed. No one asked me what really happened. They didn't need to. A lie that big didn't need proof, it just needed repetition. At home, the air was heavier than silence. My father avoided long conversations. Maria's footsteps followed me everywhere. One afternoon, when I sat down to watch TV with my stepsisters, she suddenly appeared with a nervous smile. "Sweetheart, maybe it's better if you give them some space. You know, until things settle down." "Things settle down," I repeated. "You mean until everyone forgets I exist?" Her face flushed. "Don't be dramatic." But I wasn't being dramatic, I was being erased. They didn't stop there. A new rule appeared. Every few days. No being alone with the kids. No closed doors. No phone calls after 10. Every one of them wrapped in soft excuses about safety and rebuilding trust. Trust. The word made me sick. Even the house itself began to feel different. Once it had been loud TV noise, laughter, the sound of Lily's music blasting through the walls. Now it was quiet, careful, and cold. Maria's laughter vanished. My father's office door stayed shut. It was like we'd all agreed to pretend normal life had never existed. The only one who still felt alive in the story was Lily. I saw her photos on social media, smiling with new friends, posing in a cheerleading uniform, surrounded by people who adored her. Her captions were full of sunshine and self-love quotes, like she'd finally found peace. And me, I was still the villain in her fairy tale. I tried to call her, once. She picked up on the third ring. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You know it's not true." There was a long pause. Then flatly, "I don't want to talk about it." Click. That single sound, the end of the call, felt like a blade sliding between my ribs. I started noticing small details that didn't make sense. Maria would tense up whenever the phone rang late at night. My father started taking calls outside. Once I heard him whisper, "We just need to keep this quiet." Keep what quiet, I wondered. The lie or their guilt for believing it? On base, my father's colleagues looked at him differently. At the commissary, people stared. I overheard one woman whisper, "That's the family with the daughter, right?" Her voice dropped, but her eyes followed me. I wanted to disappear. Everywhere I went, I could feel it, that invisible brand burned into my skin. Not a scar anyone could see, but one that changed everything. One evening, Maria knocked softly on my door. "Charlotte, dinner's ready," she said. Her tone was careful, like she was approaching a wild animal. "I'm not hungry," I muttered. "Charlotte, please, you have to eat." "Why?" I snapped, finally turning to face her. "So I have energy for my next interrogation." Her lips trembled. "I know you're hurting. We all are. You're not the one being treated like a monster in your own house." She didn't reply. She just looked at me for a long moment, her eyes glistening, then turned away. For a second, I thought I saw guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Later that night, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen again. Maria's voice was low but sharp. "This can't go on. It's affecting the girls. I know," my father said. "Just give it time. She's breaking David. Then maybe she needs space." The words stung more than I expected. Maybe she needs space. They were talking about me like I was a problem to be relocated. At school, things hit a new low. During lunch, I walked into the cafeteria and the noise dipped. Someone muttered, "That's her," and laughter followed. I turned around, walked straight out, and ate alone behind the gym. I thought about running away that day, just disappearing. That night, I dreamed about Lily. She was standing in our living room, smiling sweetly while I screamed at her, but no sound came out. When I woke up, my throat ached. It was around then that I started noticing how tired my father looked. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered he chose this. He chose to believe a lie. One evening, I confronted him. "Do you really believe me, Dad?" He hesitated, then said, "Of course I do. Then why are you treating me like I'm dangerous?" His jaw tightened. "Because people are watching. Everything we do reflects on this family." "For the family," I said bitterly. "That's all that matters, right?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. That night, I stared out my window, watching the base lights flicker against the dark sky. The hum of the distant jets was steady, almost comforting. Everything out there moved with precision order, while my life spiraled into chaos. For the first time, I wondered if this was who I'd become forever, the accused, the unwanted, the forgotten. I thought about calling Lily again, demanding she tell the truth. But what would be the point? Her silence was her power, and mine was my prison. In the distance, I heard Maria whisper something to my father. If this keeps up, she'll break. He sighed. Maybe she already has. And for the first time, I didn't disagree. I stopped marking the days. It didn't matter whether it was Monday or Sunday. Every morning felt the same. The house was quiet, careful, rehearsed. Everyone avoided me, but no one dared to say my name. Maria's voice had taken on a soft, sugary tone, the kind people use when speaking to a patient in recovery. Charlotte could, you take your meals in your room for now. Charlotte, maybe skip the next family event. Each sentence was disguised as kindness, but carried the same message: stay out of sight. I was a ghost with chores. When I walked through the house, my stepsisters would fall silent eyes, darting toward Maria for silent approval. My father buried himself in work, coming home late, leaving early. I began to wonder if he planned it that way to avoid looking at me, to avoid choosing sides. I overheard things I wasn't meant to hear. One night, Maria whispered to him, "She's scaring the girls. Maybe she should go stay with someone else for a while." My father didn't answer right away. The silence was enough. That night I cried for the first time in weeks. Not loud, ugly sobs, just quiet tears soaking into my pillow until the room blurred. A few days later, I got an invitation from a classmate, an old friend who hadn't yet abandoned me. "A small party," she said. "Just a few people. Nothing big." For a moment I hesitated. I hadn't been to a social event in months. I thought maybe they were starting to believe me again. I was wrong. When I arrived, conversations died mid-sentence. People stared. My friend who'd invited me walked over with a strained smile. "Hey, I didn't know you'd actually come." "Why wouldn't I?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's just some parents found out. They don't want, trouble." "Trouble?" I repeated, my throat tightening. "You mean me?" He didn't deny it. I walked out before anyone could say another word. The night air was cold against my face. I walked until the lights of the base looked like stars scattered on the ground. That was the night I realized I didn't live there anymore, not really. When I got home, Maria was waiting at the kitchen table. "Charlotte, you missed dinner," she said softly. "I wasn't hungry," she sighed. "Your father and I think maybe it's time you considered staying with your uncle for a while, just until things settle." Her voice trembled, as though she wanted me to agree to make the decision easy. I stared at her for a long moment. "You mean leave?" She flinched. "Don't say it like that." "How should I say it?" "Maria, you're kicking me out to protect your reputation. Call it what it is." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. I walked away before she could offer another carefully packaged excuse. That night I found myself rereading an old text from my uncle. "If you ever need a place to stay, our door is always open." I'd ignored it when he sent it months ago, thinking things would get better. Now it felt like a lifeline. I didn't decide to leave right away. The thought of packing up and disappearing terrified me. But staying was killing me slowly. Every day I could feel my father's disappointment like static in the air. Every glance from Maria felt like surveillance. The final push came a few nights later. I was passing by my father's office when I heard him say quietly, "It might be for the best. She needs space." Maria replied, "She's still a child." "She's not our child," he said. That sentence ended any remaining illusion of belonging. At dawn, I packed. Just essentials, clothes, documents, my journal, the necklace my mother had given me before she left. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It read, "Don't worry. The problem solved itself." I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I walked out quietly, my duffel bag cutting into my shoulder as the first light of morning spilled over the base. The bus to Okinawa was half empty. The air smelled of metal and fuel. I pressed my forehead to the window and watched the base disappear behind me, shrinking into a cluster of neat, perfect buildings that no longer felt like home. Each mile that passed brought a strange mixture of grief and relief. I thought I'd feel free, but instead I felt hollow, like the lie had emptied me out and left a shell in its place. At one stop, an elderly woman sat beside me. She noticed my red eyes, but said nothing until hours later when she quietly handed me a napkin and murmured, "Some storms only clear once you walk away." I nodded, unable to speak. When the bus finally pulled into the Okinawa station, my uncle was waiting. His expression was cautious but kind. My aunt stood beside him, her arms open. "Come here," she said softly, pulling me into a hug. "You're safe now." Safe. It was the first time I'd heard that word in months. But as I stood there, surrounded by people who actually wanted me, I realized something important. Safety wasn't the same as peace. The lie had followed me here, invisible but heavy, and no matter how far I ran, I knew it would always cast a shadow. Still that night, lying in a clean bed with no one whispering about me, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, I could learn how to breathe again. My uncle's house was the kind of place where time seemed to move slower. The air smelled of salt from the sea. The wooden floors creaked under every step, and laughter, soft, unhurried laughter, came easily. It was nothing like the base where discipline ruled every breath. Here, people looked at you when they spoke. They listened. My aunt, a retired teacher, had a way of talking that made you feel seen without having to explain yourself. She didn't ask for details about what happened. She didn't need to. The exhaustion on my face said enough. For the first few weeks, I slept like someone recovering from war, deeply heavily, as if my body was catching up on all the nights I'd spent awake, staring at the ceiling. Some mornings I'd wake up disoriented, expecting to hear Maria's footsteps outside my door, or my father's stern voice calling me down for family discussions. But instead, there was only the soft hum of the sea breeze and my aunt humming as she made breakfast. At first, I avoided talking about the past. My uncle never pushed. But one evening, as we washed dishes together, he said quietly, "I know it doesn't make sense right now, but don't let one lie decide the rest of your life." I looked at him tired. What life? The one my sister burned to the ground. He smiled sadly. "A fire doesn't destroy everything, Charlotte. Sometimes it just clears the way." That line stayed with me for days. My aunt tried to fill the silence with small acts of care. She'd leave folded clothes by my door, make my favorite tea, ask if I'd like to help in the garden. Slowly, the world started to feel real again. But guilt has a strange way of lingering, even when you've done nothing wrong. One afternoon, I caught myself watching my aunt's young neighbor playing with her son in the yard. Their laughter echoed through the open window, and suddenly I felt like an intruder in someone else's happiness. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Maybe I forgot how to be normal." My uncle read it accidentally when I left it on the table. The next morning, he handed me a pamphlet. "Think about this," he said simply. It was a recruitment brochure for the self-defense forces. I blinked. "You want me to join the military after what happened?" "You need structure," he said. "You need something that belongs to you, not to their version of you." At first, I laughed it off. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The military had destroyed me once, yes, but maybe that meant it was the one thing that could help me rebuild. I applied. The process was long, invasive, and terrifying. Each form I filled out felt like a test of how much truth I could bear to tell. Every time they asked about previous investigations, I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. In the end, I wrote nothing. There were no official charges, no convictions, just whispers. And whispers don't go on record. When the acceptance email arrived, I stared at it for nearly an hour before believing it was real. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not a polite practice smile, but a real one. Training was brutal. Early mornings, sleepless nights, drills that left me gasping for breath and wondering if I'd made a mistake. But it was also freeing. There I wasn't the accused. I was Recruit Horn, a name, not a rumor. The instructors did not care about my past. They cared if I could keep up, follow orders, and work as part of a team. The exhaustion left no room for anxiety. Each day was survival in motion. And strangely, I thrived. There was something almost sacred about the rhythm of it, the clatter of boots, the synchronized marches, the weight of my rifle against my shoulder. Every bruise and blister felt like proof that I was rebuilding myself piece by piece. At night, I'd lie in my bunk and listen to the steady breathing of the others around me. For once, I wasn't afraid of silence. It wasn't judgment anymore, it was peace. A few months into training, Maria sent a letter. I recognized her looping handwriting before I even opened it. My fingers trembled as I held the envelope. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. I burned it in a small tin outside the barracks, watching the smoke curl into the dark. That same week, my aunt wrote to me, "You don't owe forgiveness to those who confuse guilt with love." That line stayed with me longer than any military slogan. By the end of my first year, I'd stopped thinking about Lily every day. The ache had dulled into something quieter, a scar, not a wound. One evening, during a night run, I reached the top of a hill overlooking the ocean. The moon shimmered on the waves below, and for the first time I felt okay. Not healed, not happy, but okay. I looked down at my uniform at the patches I'd earned and whispered, "Maybe this time I get to choose who I am." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't revenge. It was something in between freedom. 3 years passed before the past came knocking again. By then, I had built a new rhythm wake before dawn train until exhaustion, eat in silence with people who knew me only as Sergeant Horn. I was no longer the girl whispered about on a base in Japan. I was someone steady, respected, capable. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message that froze me mid-step. From Mom. Your sister's been hospitalized. She tried to hurt herself. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing at first. Just a hollow, distant kind of awareness, like reading about a stranger's tragedy. Then came the flood, anger, confusion, and something I didn't want to name. Before I could even respond, another message came in, this time from my father. From Dad. She admitted she lied. The world went silent. The training ground around me, the hum of distant chatter, everything disappeared. I sat down on the cold concrete and read the words again and again, waiting for them to lose meaning. But they didn't. She admitted. She lied. My sister, the girl who'd looked me in the eyes and denied me my future, had finally spoken the truth. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there, fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. For years, I'd imagined what this moment would feel like. I thought I'd feel vindicated, relieved, maybe even free. Instead, all I felt was exhausted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every memory, every whisper, every cold stare, every night I'd prayed for someone to believe me. All because of her jealousy, her need for attention, her silence when I begged her to tell the truth. My phone buzzed again the next morning. This time it was my father calling. Against my better judgment, I answered. His voice was heavy, like he hadn't slept in days. She's been talking to a therapist, he said quietly. She told them she made it up because she was jealous. Of you staying with me. Of how everyone seemed to like you better. I laughed bitterly. So this was about popularity. Charlotte, no, Dad. Don't Charlotte me. She destroyed my life because she wanted to win a competition I never even entered. There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear his shame. She's asking for your forgiveness, he said finally. I almost laughed. Forgiveness. Yes. She says she can't live with what she did. Did she think about that when I couldn't go back to school? When I got rejection letters from every college I applied to? When people crossed the street to avoid me? He sighed. She was a child. She made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday, I snapped. What she did was calculated. She didn't just ruin my reputation, she ruined me. I heard a chair creak on the other end, then his voice low and pleading. You don't have to forgive her, but don't let this destroy you anymore. The anger, it'll eat you alive. I hung up. For hours afterward, his words echoed in my head. The anger will eat you alive. He wasn't wrong. I'd lived with anger for so long that it had become the only thing keeping me standing. Without it, I wasn't sure what was left. That night, I dreamed of Lily for the first time in years. We were children again, sitting in our old living room, drawing on scraps of paper. She laughed when I drew our father's face too big, her voice bright and innocent. Then in the dream, she looked at me and whispered, I didn't mean to. I woke up with my heart racing. The next morning, my phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail. Her voice. Hey, she said softly, trembling. I know you probably hate me. You should. I hate me too. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know how to live with what I did. Her words cracked near the end, dissolving into quiet sobs. I deleted the message without saving it, but for the rest of the day, her voice haunted me. Every word felt like a hand reaching from the wreckage of the past, asking for something I couldn't give. That evening, I went for a run along the perimeter road. The air was cold, the sky painted with the soft orange of a fading sunset. I ran until my lungs burned, until the thoughts blurred. When I finally stopped standing alone under the pale glow of a streetlight, I whispered to the night, you don't get to break me twice. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need an apology. I didn't need revenge. I just needed distance. Lily had finally spoken the truth, but it didn't set me free. It just confirmed something I'd always known. Forgiveness doesn't belong to the person who asks for it. It belongs to the one who decides whether to give it, and I wasn't ready to. Not yet, maybe not ever. Months passed after Lily's confession, and for a while I let myself believe the past was finished, like an old wound that had finally scabbed over. But scars don't disappear. They just stop bleeding. I threw myself into my work. My unit was stationed overseas, far from Japan, far from anything that reminded me of the person I used to be. I found purpose again, leading teams, solving problems, being someone reliable. My commanding officer once said, Horn, you don't flinch. You're steady. He didn't know that steadiness came from surviving chaos. Then one evening, as I was wrapping up reports, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. Lily's struggling. She lost her job. She's behind on rent. Please talk to her. I stared at the screen unmoved. The irony was almost poetic. The girl who had burned down my life was now calling for help from the ashes of her own. I typed one short reply. No. I set the phone down, finished my paperwork, and went to bed. But the universe doesn't let old ghosts die that easily. 2 days later, her name flashed on my screen. Incoming video call, Lily. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over decline. Then curiosity, dangerous, familiar curiosity, made me press accept. The image that appeared nearly knocked the breath out of me. Lily looked hollow. Her once bright hair hung limp, her face pale and thinner than I remembered. The sparkle in her eyes, the one that used to draw attention everywhere she went, was gone. She gave a small broken smile. I didn't think you'd answer, she whispered. I almost didn't. She nodded, eyes glistening. I don't want to bother you. I didn't know who else to call. Mom can't help, Dad won't even speak to me. I don't have anyone left. Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt something stir in me, a flicker of the old instinct to protect her, but I crushed it before it grew. What do you want, Lily? I don't know, she said honestly. I thought if I could talk to you, maybe I could fix things. Fix things, I repeated quietly. You think this can be fixed? Her eyes filled with tears. I know I can't undo what I did. I ruined your life. I was jealous, stupid, selfish. You were cruel, I interrupted, my tone calm but sharp. You didn't just lie. You watched me suffer. You heard people talk about me, and you said nothing. You let me drown because it made you feel seen. She covered her mouth, sobbing. I know. I hate myself for it. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. I'm not going to scream at you, Lily. Not because I forgive you, but because I'm tired. I spent years carrying the weight of your lie. I won't carry your guilt too. She looked up, trembling. So that's it. You're just done with me. Yes, I said softly. I'm done. Her sobs deepened. I just wanted you to understand. I do understand, I cut in. You wanted attention. Now you have silence. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I could see her searching my face for the sister she once knew, the one who might have reached across the screen and said something comforting. But that girl was gone. I hope you find peace, Lily, I said quietly, but you won't find it through me. And with that, I ended the call. For several minutes, I just sat there staring at the dark reflection of my face on the blank screen. My pulse was steady, my breathing even. There was no anger, no relief, just stillness. That was the moment I realized the past no longer owned me. I didn't check for messages from my parents after that. I didn't wonder if Lily would call again. The silence that once terrified me now felt like freedom. In the months that followed, I finished a major project in my unit and began training recruits, something I never thought I'd have the patience or heart to do. They called me Sergeant Horn, not Charlotte, the accused, not the girl with the broken family, just Horn. On my days off, I started working on an app, something small, something mine. Coding helped me focus to build something orderly when my life had once been chaos. I began to meet new people, friends who didn't know my past, who laughed with me easily. One night while testing the app, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail, no name, no message preview. For a moment, I considered listening. Then I hit delete. I didn't need to know who it was. Whoever they were, they belonged to a world I'd already walked away from. Weeks later, during a morning run, I reached the top of a hill overlooking the sunrise. The horizon burned gold and pink waves crashing far below. I stood there, the wind cold against my face, and I realized something simple but true. I didn't forgive Lily. I didn't hate her either. I just stopped needing her to understand. Some peace doesn't come from healing, it comes from leaving. And for the first time in years, as the sun climbed higher, I smiled without feeling guilty for it. Because I had finally done the one thing I couldn't do back then, I had chosen my own peace.